What's going on, everybody? I'm Patrick Chapla, founder of Powlax and creator of Powlax Master Coach, and in this video we're going to be going over the dodge, follow, float midfield motion and teaching you guys how to coach it within 3VOs, 3V2s, and 3V3s. So a little background on the dodge, follow, float midfield motion. It is a circular motion that is primarily used with midfielders, where the whole goal of this motion on offense is to dodge to draw a slide and then swing the ball to the other side and try to attack recovering players on the backside. And one of the reasons why we really love it is because it is a very simple offense to learn. It can regenerate itself. We can continuously run it over and over, and each time we run it, there's a new opportunity to get to the goal and score. And it is also paired really easily with a bunch of attack motions that can create an entire offense that is very dangerous and can flow really well. One last thought about dodge, follow, float and how it pertains to this video is that dodge, follow, float is a mirrored motion and can be run from both the top left and top right spots. And because I wanted to keep things consistent and go over a lot of information, we only dodge from the top left spot, which is down the righty alley, or what's referred to as the righty alley. And you can also run this with left-handed players dodging down the lefty alley. All of the roles just kind of reverse, but it's the same basic motion. The other aspect of this video is 3VOs, 3V2s, and 3V3s. And the reason why we want to train these motions within these drills is because it can give younger players or inexperienced players a great first look at how motions work on the offensive side of the ball. You can also add in a bunch of different skills, and it's really easy to see who's really picking up on those skills. On the defensive side of the ball, all of these 3VO, 3V2, and 3V3 drills will incorporate almost every single type of defensive strategy that players will see in the bigger 6-on-6 sets of offense and defense. And so as we run these drills consistently, players begin to see how they are incorporated into our larger sets. Before we get into this video, if you have not yet checked out the how to run 3VOs, 3V2s, and 3V3s effectively video, definitely check that out. It'll teach you guys what we're looking for in these drills and show you guys how to set them up and run them efficiently. But right now, let's get into 3VO, dodge, follow, float. To start a dodge, follow, float, the players first have to be in these positions. M1 is top left and he's going to dodge. M2 is top right and he's going to follow. And M3 is on the crease and he's going to float. Here's a quick video of everyone doing it together. As M1 dodges, he's going to be using his north-south dodges trying to score. In a 3VO, we don't want to have players just running to the goal and shooting because we're not really practicing anything. So in these drills, we're going to have him pull the ball out using his hands-free dodge like a step back, throwback, or a question mark, and he's going to pass back to M2. As M2 catches the ball, he is kind of a relay man, but he also wants to survey the field and make sure that all of his reads are correct. So the biggest thing that M2 must do is he must step in and he must survey the field, because in the 6-on-6 offense, he might have different reads and looks than just in this 3VO set. So he has the option to throw the ball back to M1 or relay the ball to M3. The biggest thing we want to make sure that he is doing in this 3VO set is that he has to step in. If he doesn't step in future drills, he won't be drawing anyone, and the defense will be able to slow play, and we won't be taking advantage of this situation. Here, he will pass to M3. As M3 catches the ball, he's got a couple of options. The first option is that he's going to go to the goal. He can do this by using a wind-up dodge. If he's in a good enough position, he can use a time and room shot. And it's important to note that as he floats, we don't want him to float all the way up top. We want him to float into a really good sniper position, which is about 8 yards up from GLE and 8 yards out from GLE. This way, as he catches it, he's already in a dangerous position. After he tries to go to the goal, if nothing is there, he's got a couple of options again. He can pass the ball back to M2, who could pass back to M1, but this really isn't within our offensive motion anymore, because now, if he can't get to the goal, our motion didn't create an advantage. And so it's better if he decides to pull the ball out and reset. And if he pulls the ball up top, he will end up being top right. M1 will be the crease and M2 will be top left. Let's see how this looks in some live video and talk about how I decided to run it in this small group clinic. With this small group of players, we were working on how to recycle the motion rather than actually going to the goal. And the reason was because we had a bunch of players who had run the motion before and a bunch of players who had no idea what they were doing. And I've always found that it's much easier to tell players that they can then go to the goal once they understand the rotation, rather than having them understand how to recycle the motion after they've always been going to the goal. So in this video, you'll see that as I'm running 3VOs, the players are actually doing their dodge, follow, float, throwing back to the float, but usually the float would float too high because his instructions were to immediately throw it back to the next person who would dodge the righty alley. And so as we get into 3v2s, we will see that a lot of players would float up too high when they could have ended up being really dangerous. As you're running these 3VOs, it's important that you know how you want to set up and run your drill. For some players, if you really want to give players an understanding of the fact that we're creating an advantage and that we want to go to the goal as we have this advantage, you're going to want to set it up so you run the motion, and whoever is the person who we're trying to set up, that they're always going to the goal and that we put a new ball in every rep. If you're trying to give players an understanding that these motions can generate themselves and that they can continually run them over and over again, you can have the player who we're setting up pull the ball out, reset the offense, and go again. Now let's get into some 3v2s. As we go into 3v2s, we're going to go over what the defense's responsibilities are, and then we'll go into the offensive responsibilities. The biggest thing for 3-on-2s with a defense is that we're missing one player, and the player that we're missing is always the slide man. So let's go to the green screen and we'll show you what it means for our drill. The first time that we notice that we are missing the crease slide man is as the ball is passed across the top. So as the ball is passed from M1 to M2, the LSM is going to see approach M2 and say ball. Also, as that's happening, defensive midi 1 is going to spider in and say I'm in once he is able to cover M3. As the ball is passed back from M2 to M1, defensive midi 1 is going to see approach out and say ball, while the LSM is going to spider in till he can play M3 and then say I'm in or 2. It is very important on the defensive end that we start a drill by passing so that players can get used to rotating into their positions, because if we look at the players standing still, you can tell that defensive midi 1 has ball. The LSM is actually a 2, meaning he would be the second slide. So the player that he is actually defending is M2, not M3. As we get into the dodge, the defensive midi 1 wants to keep M1 down the side. As this happens, the LSM needs to get sideways so that he can see the ball and track M2 and M3 as they're moving, while being able to help the ball if defensive midi 1 gets beat. On a throwback to M2, defensive midi 1 will spider in as the 2. The LSM will evaluate M2's danger and see approach if he's dangerous. The reason that the LSM wants to evaluate M2's danger is because if M2 decides that he's going to just relay the ball to M3 really quickly, the LSM can slow play and get to M3 faster than defensive midi 1 can. And so if M2 is not dangerous at all, he doesn't really need to come out of the crease area in order to play him. He can just stay inside. But if M2 does get dangerous, he's going to need to make a C approach and break down and play M2. In this case, M2 is going to step in, survey the field, and now pass to M3. As M3 catches the ball, defensive midi 1 needs to C approach and break down on M3, and the LSM needs to spider in, becoming the 2, and get sideways so he can account for the ball, M2, and M1. As M3 dodges, if he decides to pull the ball out and run back up top, defensive midi 1 would play the ball and get with him up top, and then as the offense resets, we would end up with the same scenario we did when we started. So what we just covered is everything we need to know as far as running this from a defensive end. Now let's get into the offensive side of the ball. Once again, we must make sure that we are starting with a pass, and so M2 will pass the ball to M1 to begin the drill. As M1 catches the ball, he's going to use a north-south dodge down the alley. Now, as he's dodging, he has 3 looks. His first look, as always, is to score, but because we don't have a slide man, this can be too easy, and if we want the other players to get a view of the motion, we can say that players cannot actually go to the goal until we've successfully ran the motion and everyone has touched the ball. So if he cannot look to score, his second look is a through pass through to M3, and this will be there if the 2, or in this case the LSM, is sleeping. If that's not there, his next look is to throw back to M2 using his hands-free dodge. As M2 catches the ball, the first thing he's going to do is step in and make sure that he draws a man. As he does this, he does have the option to shoot or dodge, but for the most part, we're using him as a relay to M3, who's the player who we're really setting up on offense. As he is surveying in a real game, he does have the option of throwing to M1 or M3, but because we're up a man and we're creating this advantage, we know that M1 will not usually be open because a man will have slid to him, so he should be covered. But he does have the option. For our example, we're going to make sure he's passing to M3. As M3 catches the ball, he's going to use a time and room shot, maybe a wind-up dodge to try to get past the recovering defensive midi 1 and try to score a goal. If nothing is there, he has the option to pass back to M2, but because we're not really creating another advantage, now we're outside of our motion and really we're just relaying the ball from player to player. So it's better to have players pull the ball out and reset the entire motion so that they can learn that this motion can be repeated time and time again and we can maintain possession. So if he pulls the ball out, he's going to go back to top right, M2 is going to go to top left, and M1 is going to go back to the crease. And from this point, we can run the entire motion again with either M3 dodging from top right or M2 dodging from top left. I'm going to mention it one more time because it's very important, but after M3 gets stopped, it's very important that we teach our players that these motions can reset themselves, because in a game, a lot of players think that because we ran this motion, now I have to go to the goal, but in reality, we want to make sure we're maintaining possession so that we can play offense again. It doesn't make sense to dodge through 2 or 3 players just because you were the man getting set up and turn the ball over to the other team. So if players can learn that they can reset and utilize that a lot, our offensive possessions get longer, the defenses get tired, and we have better chances as we go. In this first 3v2 video, we really notice how developing the 3v0s really impacts the 3v2s, because as you watch this video, you'll notice that the float player floats way too high. Now, for this particular situation, we ended up having a nice dodge down the lefty alley and a goal, but in a 6-on-6 set, we would rather have him float to a dangerous position and then have a better dodging opportunity from the float position. Defensively from this video, we noticed that we did a pretty good job of keeping the dodger down the side, and we did a really good job of splitting 2 in the middle, making sure we were covering passing lanes and then recovering where we needed to. In the second 3-on-2 video, we had a player who was on the crease who had run this motion a couple times before. He does a much better job of floating to a position where he was dangerous, and he ends up having a really great time and room shot. Now, defensively, the reason why this time and room shot was there was because we didn't get off of the ball when it was dodged fast enough to recover in, and so he had a lot of time to catch the ball, step in, and shoot it. Now let's move into some 3-on-3s. Now that we're into our 3v3 set, we're going to have a couple more ways that we need to communicate as we're playing. The first of which that we're adding is a slide man, and as he is ready to slide, he is going to say, "I go," or "hot," meaning I am the one who's going to slide. As he slides, he's going to say "fire" or "find one." I like "find one" because he's telling the player on ball that he needs to find a new guy. The other couple we're going to add as we get through this is we're going to have a left, we're going to have a right, which means I am the man to the left of the man playing ball, and I am the man to the right of the man playing ball. The last part of communication that we're going to have is actually a nonverbal communication, which is point them through. So if a player who is in the middle of a defense can see the entire play and direct recovering players to their assignments, it's extremely beneficial. So we're going to want to look for that as well. The last new term that we're going to go over in this set is shedding, which is making sure that if you are going to slide, that you are staying ball side of the man who you are playing. This way, if you need to slide, you don't need to run through that player to get to them. So let's get to the green screen and show you guys how it all works. As with all of these drills, we're going to start with a pass. So as M2 passes the ball to M1, the LSM is going to spider into M3, and he will be the I'm in or 2. Also, as that's happening, defensive midi 2 is going to shed his man, maintaining ball side leverage so that he has a clear path to the player with the ball. Finally, defensive midi 1 is going to see approach and break down to prepare for M1's dodge. Now that we know exactly how the players are going to move on passes, it's important that we understand exactly what we're training. And so the biggest thing that we have with 3-on-3s that we didn't with 3-on-2s is a slide player. And so as we're sliding, it's very important to know that we're never going to slide to collide. It's way better to slide under control, break down, stop motion and get in the hands of a player than it is to try and blow somebody up, because a lot of the players nowadays are too quick and can easily get around you if you try to run out to them to crush them. And so as we're doing this, please make sure that your players are breaking down on their slides. The other part is, when do you want them to slide? So for the most part, with a lot of the youth players that I coach, it's better if I instruct them that they have to slide every time so we can see the recovery, because as you're playing defense, defense is just a constant state of recovery, because it's better to make a slide happen and have to recover and know how that works than to not have our recoveries down. So for most of mine, if I'm doing 3-on-3s, I will force a slide or force a double so that we are practicing our recoveries a lot. The other way to do it is you can have your players evaluate whether they're going to slide or not. And this is really good for the offensive side of the ball, because if a dodger is dodging and he's looking to score and a player doesn't slide, then he can easily go to the goal. But for the most part, I really like to run it where we are sliding every time. So let's get back to the green screen. As M1 dodges, he beats defensive midi 1. As defensive midi 1 gets beat, defensive midi 2 slides. And as he slides, he says find one, which lets defensive midi 1 know to recover to the middle and pick up a new player. As the LSM watches the slide, he will then point defensive midi 1 through to M3 as the play develops. Another good way of thinking about how we want our players to recover is that we always want our players to recover away from the pass. So because M1 threw the ball up to M2, defensive midi 1 is going to recover all the way through to M3 rather than going to M2. As M2 catches the ball, he's going to step in, making sure that the LSM plays him so we can keep our advantage. In this situation, if M2 decides to pass it right away to M3, the LSM can slow play and then play M3, allowing defensive midi 1 to recover to M2. In our example, M2 steps in and the LSM plays him. As the LSM is playing him, it's important to understand that defensive midi 1 is now right, because he is accountable for the right side of the LSM. Defensive midi 2 is now left, because he is responsible for the left side of the LSM. So if defensive midi 2 decided to dodge to the LSM's right, defensive midi 1 would have to pick him up if the LSM got beat. Same works for the other side. As M3 catches the ball, the LSM becomes left and defensive midi 2 becomes right. As M3 dodges, if he beats defensive midi 1 over the top, it is the LSM's responsibility to slide adjacent. If M3 beats defensive midi 1 underneath, it's defensive midi 2's job to slide. There's definitely a lot going on in this defensive 3-on-3, so if there's anything that I can clarify, please feel free to let me know, and I will do the best I can. Now let's move into the offensive 3v3. Now that we're into our 3v3, there's really not much different from the 3v2 other than the fact that now we have to account for a player actually sliding. So the reads are relatively similar, they're almost exactly the same, but now we have to account for the player who's going to slide. As M1 dodges, his first look again is to score. His second look is to look through the defense and see if the off-ball players are sleeping so he can throw a through pass through to M3. If this is also not there, he wants to make sure that at the very least he draws a slide. As he draws the slide, he's going to use his hands-free dodge, roll away, and pass the ball up to M2. As M2 catches the ball, he's going to step in to shoot and survey the field. Because M1 is now not open because he just got slid to, he's definitely going to decide to pass to M3 if he himself does not have a dodge or a shot. As M3 catches the ball, his job is to try to beat the recovering defensive midi 1. If nothing is there, he's going to pull it out and reset the offense. Now let's check out some 3-on-3 live action and show you how it looks on the field. This first example is one that this is exactly what we're looking for. And so we got a really nice dodge. We accepted the slide pretty well, got away with our hands, moved the ball to the follow drew a man, and then the float player had run this a couple times, so he actually floated to a really good position for him. He's actually a really good shooter, but so as he catches the ball, even though it wasn't the best pass, he catches the ball, sees the field, and then makes a really nice wind-up dodge on his defender and buries the ball. So defensively in this same video, we get a really nice slide and recovery, and the only place we would really instruct them to do better is as the recovery player is going through the defense, he would want to do a better job of breaking down and making sure that he can play body on the player who is dodging the recovery. In the second 3-on-3 video, we see how important it is to make sure that we are spidering in, because as we take the dodge, the player who is in the 2 position didn't spider enough into the crease, and the crease ends up with a really easy dunk. So we've got to make sure we are having our players spider in all of the time. A lot of times players don't realize that in the 3-on-3 they had practiced the same thing in the 3-on-2, but they think because we have that third player, now I don't have to account for as many people. But it's really important that we as coaches make sure our players understand that when we're in our 3-on-2s, we are really working on the same exact motions that we would in the 3v3s. In this 3v3 example, this is one of my favorites because it really shows that you can always reset the motion. And so as we dodge the alley, the defense sends a slide. They don't do the greatest job recovering. I don't think they communicated very well. But as the ball is thrown back up to the follow player, he realizes that we didn't run the motion very well and the crease player didn't float. And so as he realizes this, he's patient, he pulls the ball out, he throws the ball to the float, and then the float does a great job in realizing, okay, now we're reset, now I can dodge my alley, and then we'll be into the motion again. And as he dodges, the crease player doesn't slide in time, and he buries the ball. The biggest key to offensive 3v3s is that now we have to be faster than we were with 3v2s, because in a 3v2, the player who is actively on ball has to wait until the ball is passed until he can actually get over to play the other player. But so in 3v3s, when defensive midi 2 decides to slide, now defensive midi 1 can leave really early to recover in. And so if the passes aren't fast enough, you're going to end up dodging a player who is broken down and is in good position rather than someone who is recovering quickly through the defense. And so this is what we're trying to work on as we're building from 3v0s to 3v2s to 3v3s. A couple of the drills that I like to pair with these dodge, follow, float drills are anything that players are working on their north-south dodges and wind-up dodges. Also drills where players are learning how to step in to draw a player in order to move the ball. The other really huge one is some kind of attack motion that we can learn to pair with dodge, follow, float so that we're building an entire offensive set and not just a midfield motion. And last, and this one's actually probably more important than the attack motion, is some type of other motion that allows the dodger to actively choose his direction. So for this part, the dodger is really just dodging the alley every time. He doesn't really have much decision making. But so if you can pair dodge, follow, float with another motion like dodge, shallow cut, float, or dodge, fade, float, then your dodgers are going to be able to make their decisions, and everyone who is reading the dodger is going to have to make their reactions, and everything is going to get a little more complicated, but you're going to learn which players understand how to read our offense. Dodge, follow, float is one of the most widely known and widely used motions in all of lacrosse, and that's because it can be paired with almost any attack or midfield motion. It also has great attributes that really let players see how to defend motions as well as run them. You can also integrate a ton of different skills into dodge, follow, float. But so if you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me at patrick@powlax.com. Definitely make sure to check out some of the other motions at powlaxmastercoach.com to see what works best with dodge, follow, floats. If you really like the video, make sure to share it. But either way, I really hope you found value in this video and that you feel that this has helped you become a more confident coach. Have a good one. I'll see you in the next video.